Candyman is a new horror film that is also a sequel to an original horror movie from many, many years ago being made now, kind of like a legacy sequel more so than anything else, and this movie is directed and written by DaCosta. I know that Jordan Peele produced this movie, and he had a hand in writing the screenplay at some point, but, you know, he did not make this movie. You know, he might have picked it up, might have had some hand in the way the story was told, but even the way the credits are, you know, organized, it implies that DaCosta wrote the most latest draft of the script, probably the one that they shot with, and by they I mean her. So it's a DaCosta movie. This isn't a Jordan Peele film. I know many clickbait articles and, you know, Twitter things like to say, just to sum it up, get people to know it, Jordan Peele's Candyman, just because he's probably the most famous name. It's not his, though. Now that that's out of the way, this movie takes place many years after that first Candyman in the same area of Cabrini Green, all completely gentrified. There's many new artists there. Yaha Abdul-Mateen plays an artist who is exploring urban legends to maybe make a new art piece about. He's about to be featured in an art gallery hosted by his girlfriend, Tiana Paris, and he stumbles upon the urban legend of Candyman, and once he starts to go down that rabbit hole of investigating what that's all about, he unknowingly brings it back, and the Candyman starts to terrorize the entire neighborhood. I really loved the first Candyman movie. When I walked into that movie, I was kind of like, okay, so it's like a slasher movie with Tony Todd. All right, let's see what we got here. And it turned out to be much more deep than I was expecting. It's kind of the story of like appropriation, white exploitation. You know, it's kind of like the anti-white savior movie where Virginia Madsen's character is just kind of trying to exploit this urban legend for her own kind of gain. You know, she's doing it just for the thesis. She doesn't necessarily believe in it or really care that much. She really is just concerned about what it'll do for her personally without giving back at all, without her experiencing any of it. And that, you know, goes horribly wrong for her. So I really love that movie. I think that movie has a lot of interesting things to say, and it's a movie that's, you know, strangely relevant still today, you know, for a movie from 1992. The sequels are not good. For a first movie that is so interesting and actually smart, you know, the sequels just go down the route of, all right, well, we got to bring Tony Todd back. It's a slasher, you know, they kind of lose a lot of what made that first movie so good. And it's like, you know, they have a blonde white woman as the main character in every one. It's like, okay, Virginia Madsen was the lead, let's just get more blonde white women for these other two movies. And it's like, you know, that only really worked because of the story they were trying to tell. These other two movies, it's just becoming monotonous and very obvious that you're just trying to copy off of this without knowing anything about it. So when they announced that they were actually making another sequel to this, they were going down like the Halloween route where they were making a sequel many years later to the first movie and ignoring the other ones. You know, I was totally fine with that because I feel like a Candyman movie is something that you could make and have something to say with. And, you know, considering the team you got, you do have Jordan Peele and Win Rosenfeld who worked on BlacKkKlansman together, and then you have DaCosta who did a movie called Little Woods, which is really good. I watched that like a week ago in prep for this movie, and I really enjoyed it. But that movie is an independent drama that also has a lot to say about the current state of things, you know, what certain people in America have to go through when they are kind of in the class system of being left behind. They're kind of on their own to do things. So I figured this was going to be like a surefire win for Universal and Monkeypaw Productions, and I just wanted to say first off that DaCosta directs this movie so well. My favorite part about this movie is probably her direction. Every single aspect behind the filmmaking, it feels thought out, you know, it feels planned. It's funny how they have main characters that are like artists that go to art galleries and talk about their art, because every single frame of this movie, it almost looks like they're trying to make their own kind of like portrait or something. It looks really fantastic. It's really well staged. Like the opening of this movie, you know, at the opening of the first Candyman, it's like, you know, the camera looking down at the street, and this is like, it's looking up at these buildings rising up, and it looks gorgeous. It looks wonderful. The opening scene of this movie alone honestly managed to creep me out just by placing the camera down and being like, all right, whatever's about to happen is gonna happen, and you're just gonna watch it. And I was like, this is really fantastic. DaCosta directed one creepy movie. The way they kind of utilize more of like the mirror aspect of the Candyman urban legend this time around, where that is part of the legend, like Candyman will kill you in the mirror once you say his name 5 times. And in this, you know, they see things happening, but they don't see the cause of it. But if you look in a mirror, you can see the silhouette of Candyman doing stuff, and it looked fantastic. Like at one point, someone's being dragged, and you don't see anything until they walk by like a kind of, it's not really a mirror, more like a window, but you can see a little bit of like Candyman reflection in it, and it looks fantastic. Moments where you're kind of drawn to a mirror just to see like, is Candyman there? Because earlier on, they don't make any big deal out of it. There's no jump scare sound effect, but they show you like, hey, look who's in the reflection there after they said his name 5 times. Yeah, he's watching. And I was like, oh shit. So constantly throughout the movie, whenever there was a mirror, I found myself looking like, is he gonna pop up there, you know? And I thought they handled that really well. They created some really great suspense here, and the gore scenes alone are incredible. I think Nia DaCosta does a really great job of being kind of choosy with what she shows and what she doesn't. Like, there's scenes where you definitely do see it in all of its glory, but then there's parts, like for instance, like a bathroom scene. You hear a lot of it and you see parts of it, but for the longest time, you're kind of stuck in a stall looking into like this little pocket mirror of stuff that's happening, but it's kind of obviously obscured because it's only a small image. It looks fantastic, and it's such a great idea. There's so many wonderfully fresh horror filmmaking ideas in this movie. I'm so glad that she directed this because she had a pure vision for what to do. The cinematography is excellent as well. The musical score is also wonderful. It's wonderfully creepy, and it accompanies every single aspect of this movie so well. Honestly, I can't really complain about any technical aspect of this because it was all working really high. A lot of them are, I'm assuming they used like some CG stuff here and there. It all looked pretty good, and even some stuff that is more practical looks wonderful. Like Yahya Abdul-Mateen's art studio is like so messy and dirty, but there's like, you know, portraits everywhere. It looks fantastic, like as far as like how they designed it. A lot of the more practical stuff that they do with like the body horror is wonderfully icky, you know? Like there's definitely one part in particular concerning a nail of all things where I was like, God damn it, I can't even bear to look at it, but it looks so good. But putting aside the more technical aspects of this movie, I really enjoyed the fact that this was a legacy sequel. This is one of those instances where I was like, it's kind of perfect that this is, 30 years later, we're making a sequel to it, because the way urban legends kind of work is that over time things can change. You know, certain people might forget details, or they might be making up their own thing, so you can kind of see the changes of stories. And there's definitely plenty of different stories of the Candyman that have been made over the years, and what that itself ultimately represents for this community that has been gentrified, victim to violence just based off of race discrimination. Police brutality is a big one here. And I really enjoyed everything this movie was really trying to go for. There's a lot that they try to put in this movie that I thought was really working well. I also really liked how they referenced the first Candyman in a specific way. They bring up something that I was like, I always did kind of wonder how that would carry on at all, and the way they kind of explained it, no spoilers, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's pretty genius, you know. And they explain a lot of stuff using shadow puppets. I think it was like a year ago now, I think, when Nia DaCosta uploaded like to her Instagram like the little shadow puppet stuff, and that obviously plays a huge factor in some of the backstory stuff in this movie, and it looks fantastic. The end credits are just that. You know, and I was glued there the entire time. I stayed and watched it all because it is actually telling a story at the end of the day. It accompanies the creepy kind of nature of everything about this movie so well, but there is something beautiful to the way, you know, you can tell that a lot of people put in work to make this really special. The cast here is also doing fantastic work. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II does a really great performance here. I really like how they kind of do endear you to him, because he's kind of stuck with all these like snobby art people, and he's just there, you know, he's trying to make an impact, he's trying to, you know, do something with his creative voice, and there's just so many fucking art snobs there going like, oh, Anthony, da da da. It's like, Jesus Christ. It's funny how they make that work for, like, you know, yes, you hate them because they're so annoying, because you recognize people like that definitely exist, but they also find the way to make fun of them as well. You know, they ride that line kind of perfectly. So you're kind of endeared to that character because you want him to kind of succeed. You want to feel for him, especially because the actor is so charming, and especially when the body horror stuff happens, you're like, fuck, I don't wish that on anybody. Jesus Christ. Tiana Parrish, straight out of WandaVision, also does a really great job here. I really like their chemistry in the beginning too, because it felt really natural, like an actual like couple. And I also really felt for her when stuff started to fall apart, because it is a strange situation to be a part of that's hard to really explain, and they kind of have to run the gambit of emotions there, and I thought they pulled it off really well. Colman Domingo, who's been in a lot of great stuff recently as far as like his performances, yeah, he does a really great job in this movie. He's kind of like I know a lot about Candyman, I've got a personal history with a Candyman story, and he's wonderful at that. What could have just been like, hey, I'm just the boring exposition mouthpiece, whatever. I honestly really enjoyed what Colman Domingo was doing with his performance for this character. This movie movie is also really funny. It does ride that line of horror and comedy really well, especially when it comes to Nathan Stuart Jarrett, who's mostly, I'd say he's like the most comedic relief out of everyone. You have like the art snobs who are like occasionally funny. Everyone has like occasionally like a funny line, but he's like the one who's like consistently like the comedic relief, and he wrote it really well. You know, he's wonderful and really funny in this movie. Vanessa Williams, I won't spoil anything about that character, what she's doing here, because she's from the first movie, but she's wonderful too. She's got a really great scene where I was like, man, I honestly, I can't really picture her in any other role. Like, I only really remember her from Candyman, but I wish that she was out there more because she's really great in this scene here, and she's really selling it. So there's a lot about this movie that I really enjoyed, but if I had to complain about it, and I do have some issues, it's that it definitely feels like, I think the overall complaint is rushed. There's a lot of stuff here that maybe could have used more time to breathe, more time to flesh itself out. Like the beginning of the movie, they don't really do the best job of kind of giving you more about Yahya Abdul-Mateen. When it starts, it's just like, I'm artist, I'm looking for stuff, and I have girlfriend. It's like, okay, like what else is there to that character? And as the movie goes on, there's one thing that you learn about him, no spoilers, but it's kind of obvious if you've seen that original Candyman, not gonna lie. But other than that, it just felt like, what else is there to this character? And it's just the most basic stuff. And it works, but I just wish that there was just a little bit more to push him over. Tiana Paris, there's a weird like flashback that she has in one scene, and then there's another scene where someone brings it up and then kind of moves on from it. And thinking about it, I was like, okay, I think I can see what they were trying to go for as far as like that character's ultimate arc, what she's got to do. They're trying to give her more to do than just, you know, girlfriend character. But it felt a little too much like an afterthought. It didn't feel like it was properly woven in, or that you really understood the relevance of it by the end of it. The third act kind of kicks off with the character explaining their decisions. That's all I'll really say about that. And I was like, I kind of get exactly what you're going for here, but it feels very quick, you know? It feels like you need a little bit more time to breathe and maybe explain how you're able to, you know, organize this, is all I'll really say without spoiling anything. There's also a subplot that isn't really a subplot. It's kind of like, hey, this character was in this scene, the art gallery scene earlier in the movie. Now we haven't seen her in forever, so let's cut back to her now. And it's like, it feels like the movie stops just to have like a slaughter scene. And hey, it's a wonderful scene. It's a wonderfully intense, disturbed scene, but it's also like, I think, once again, I was thinking about it and I was like, I think maybe they were trying to say this with this certain subplot. But once again, it feels like it's just kind of thrown in and just kind of left to simmer instead of actually like develop. And you kind of walk out of the movie going like, well, I don't think that was really, you could have taken that scene out and it wouldn't have made that much a difference. But if they really are, like I was thinking, trying to actually say something with that subplot, then they probably should have fleshed it out a little bit more. The ending of this movie, I can understand like from an artistic perspective of like, yeah, end it on this note and, you know, wrap it up, and it's like, cool. But I was also thinking like, man, there's still some characters that you could have wrapped up. Even this situation doesn't feel all that wrapped up unless there is a part 2 coming out, but this is like, you know, this is the kind of ending that feels like we won't be making a part 2. Like, this is, honestly, I would be surprised if they made a sequel to this. Only because it's that kind of movie that feels like it's like a end-all be-all to like the Candyman, you know, without spoiling anything. It just feels like it doesn't leave itself a lot of room to do more beyond this. But there's still these kind of plot threads they kind of left hanging like unresolved. Nothing major, but stuff they could have definitely cut back to and probably would have made some kind of an impact with you. So my biggest issue with this movie is that I wanted more of this movie. I don't know if there's like deleted scenes that they had to cut because they were trying to reach like an hour and a half specifically, because this movie is that runtime and it felt like it went by really quickly too. But I definitely could have used a lot more of it. But that being said, I really enjoyed a lot of what Nia DaCosta was trying to go for with the message of this movie, with the direction. There's some wonderful kills, some wonderful suspenseful sequences. She helms it so well, everything down to the set design, the music, the cinematography, the lighting even. It just looks so fantastic, and I really liked so much of the effort that went into this. I'm gonna give Candyman a B. I still prefer the first movie, but this is definitely way better than the other two because this movie actually is trying. It's trying to do something, and that I really appreciate about this movie. I can't wait to see what Nia DaCosta does with the Marvels, the Captain Marvel 2 movie, and if they ever do make another Candyman movie, I would like to see her come back for it, because I think she's earned it. But if you've seen Candyman, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.